Richmond was drowning in one of those angry, sideways rainstorms that felt more like punishment than weather. The kind of storm that smacked against your windshield like it was trying to warn you about something. On any other night, Thomas Anderson would have ignored it. The guy practically lived inside his $1 million Cadillac, sealed off from real life like a man hiding from his own shadow. But tonight, destiny threw a brick straight through his quiet little bubble. He slammed his foot on the brake so hard, the seatbelt nearly clotheslined him. Because just ahead, under a faded storefront awning, was a woman curled up like the world had already given up on her. But she wasn't what froze his blood. It was the thing on her finger. A ring. Not just any ring. The ring. His mother's ring. The one Elizabeth Anderson never took off. The one that vanished the same night she did 20 years ago. Thomas's throat closed up, a punch of ice right to the chest. His brain said, "This is impossible," but the pounding in his heart screamed otherwise. He stepped out into the pouring rain. Expensive shoes, perfect suit, didn't matter. Nothing mattered except that ring. The closer he got, the colder he felt. "Hey," he said, his voice cracking hard despite him trying to sound calm. "Where did you get that ring?" The woman didn't look up first. Her whole body twitched, like she could feel someone entering her invisible bubble. When she finally raised her head, he saw eyes that had seen way too much, dark, glassy, and lost. She stared at the ring, then back at him. I've always had it," she whispered, her voice thin as wet paper. Lie? Memory loss? Delusion? He didn't know. All he knew was that her answer punched a fresh hole straight into the part of him he'd spent decades boarding up. His voice softened. "What's your name?" The woman swallowed hard, like she had to dig through a dusty attic inside her mind just to grab the answer. "Sarah." The rain was pelting both of them, thunder rumbling like someone rolling bowling balls across the sky. Thomas didn't care. He couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after 20 years of nightmares, therapy sessions he skipped, and a life built on top of a wound he never let heal. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Come with me, please. Somewhere warm, somewhere safe. I need to understand." She hesitated, studying him like she wasn't sure if he was a threat or a lifeline. But something in his eyes must have connected. Desperation recognizes desperation, because she finally nodded. In the car, she curled up near the window, tiny and trembling, clutching the ring like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. Thomas drove without knowing where he was going. Didn't matter. His pulse was pounding too loud for thoughts. Every streetlight they passed caused the ring to glint, each flash another stab of memory. His mom laughing, his mom brushing his hair, his mom walking out the door for the last time. He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This was the past kicking down his door. And Sarah, she wasn't just wearing a ring. She was wearing the first real clue he'd found in 20 years. But Thomas wouldn't realize the truth until later. Sarah didn't just know something about his mother. She'd been somewhere she shouldn't have been the night Elizabeth vanished, and the memories she'd lost were the ones that could destroy everything.
The rain eased up by the time Thomas pulled into the parking lot of a small, dimly lit coffee shop tucked between an old bookstore and a barber shop that looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. The kind of place where secrets could sit quietly in the corner and no one would notice. Perfect. He guided Sarah inside, keeping a hand lightly on her shoulder, not to control her, but to steady the shaking he could feel through her thin frame. She moved like someone who'd spent years walking on broken glass. Inside, the warmth hit her first, then the smell of burnt espresso and cinnamon. She blinked, confused, like she wasn't used to safe places anymore. A waitress glanced at them, first at Thomas's soaked designer suit, then at Sarah's crooked posture and borrowed coat, and did that judgmental eyebrow raise that said, "Rich man, messy situation." Thomas ignored it, let her think whatever she wanted. The only truth that mattered was sitting across from him, trembling over a chipped mug of hot coffee. Sarah wrapped both hands around the cup, absorbing the heat like it was medicine, but she still wouldn't look him in the eyes. "Sarah," Thomas said gently, leaning forward, "I need you to tell me where you got that ring. That ring belonged to my mother." Her fingers tightened around the mug. His chest tightened too. "I'm not here to hurt you. I need answers." For a long moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the coffee shop's ancient fridge. Then Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely hanging on. "I don't remember where it came from." Thomas blinked, caught off guard. Not angry, more heartbroken. She continued, "It's fuzzy, like everything else. My whole life feels like water slipping through my fingers. Some days I wake up and don't know what city I'm in. Sometimes I remember faces that don't exist. Sometimes I forget my own." Thomas swallowed hard. He wasn't expecting that. "Do you remember anything at all about the ring?" he pressed. She stared at her hand as if it belonged to someone else. "All I know is it's the one thing that feels safe, like it came from a warm place, a home, a woman with a soft voice." She paused, eyes darting in confusion. "Sometimes I see trees, a big yard, and someone crying." Thomas froze. His blood turned electric. "Trees?" he asked, voice shaking. She nodded slowly. "A big house with tall trees and a garden." Thomas's heart slammed against his ribs because that description matched his childhood home perfectly. He kept his expression calm, but inside he was spiraling. How the hell could she know that? He pulled out his phone with a shaking hand and turned the screen toward her, a photo of Elizabeth smiling in their old backyard, the ring clear on her finger. "Do you know her?" he whispered. Sarah stared so hard her eyes seemed to burn. For a moment, something flickered, recognition, fear, pain, but then it vanished like a blown-out candle. I don't know," she whispered, dropping the phone like it burned her. "But she looks sad. I remember sadness." Thomas leaned back, breath knocked out of him. This wasn't random. This woman wasn't random. Something in her broken memory was tangled with his mother's disappearance. He slid his phone into his pocket, his mind racing between anger, hope, and dread. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I'm going to help you remember. You're not alone anymore." She looked up for the first time, and in her foggy eyes was something real, a spark, a plea for someone to finally stay instead of walk away.
Someone to finally stay instead of walk away. But Thomas didn't know that someone else was already watching. Someone who had been waiting for years for this exact moment. Someone who wasn't about to let the past crawl back into the light. Thomas barely slept that night. He tried, stretched out on his expensive leather couch, staring at the ceiling like the answers might magically appear there. But his mind kept looping the same image. Sarah, her trembling hands, his mother's ring. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense. Yet somehow, Sarah's broken memories lined up a little too perfectly with the pieces of his past he'd spent decades trying not to think about. By morning, he was running on coffee and adrenaline.
The sun had barely climbed over Richmond's skyline when he pulled up to the shelter. The building was small and rough around the edges, the kind of place most people walked past without seeing. But inside, there was warmth, a heartbeat, volunteers moving around, worn couches, the faint smell of soap and oatmeal. A young volunteer named Jessica greeted him. She clearly recognized him from the night before. "She's awake," she said softly, "a little calmer today." Thomas nodded, swallowing the nerves crawling up his throat. He followed Jessica down a narrow hallway to a small lounge where Sarah sat on a faded couch, wearing clean clothes the shelter had given her. She looked human now, still fragile, still haunted, but less like a ghost. Thomas sat across from her. "Good morning." She blinked, like she was surprised he came back. "Hi," she murmured. He tried a smile, failed miserably. "How are you feeling?" Sarah shrugged. "Like my head is full of fog." He leaned forward. "I want to help you clear it." She flinched a little, eyes darting away. Sometimes I feel like there's a door in my head. It rattles, but it won't open. And what's behind it? I don't know, but it scares me." Thomas felt something twist in his chest. That kind of fear didn't come from imagination. It came from trauma. He took a slow breath. "Sarah, yesterday you mentioned a house, trees, a garden. Do you remember anything else about it?" She closed her eyes, brow furrowed like she was trying to grab smoke. "There was a woman, pretty, kind, but sad. She cried sometimes when she thought no one could see." His throat tightened. That was his mother. God, it had to be. "What else?" he asked gently. Sarah frowned harder. "There was a sound, something slamming, yelling, and then..." She clutched her head. "Darkness. Everything went dark." Her breathing quickened, panic. Thomas immediately held up his hands. Hey, stop. It's okay. You don't have to force it." She opened her eyes, glassy and scared. "I think something bad happened there. Something really bad." Thomas's pulse thudded in his ears. The puzzle pieces were starting to form a picture he wasn't sure he wanted to see. He reached into his jacket and set a small business card on the table. "There's someone I want you to meet. A detective. Someone who can help you remember safely." She stared at the card like it was a bomb. "I don't want trouble." "You're not in trouble. You're part of something important, something connected to my mother." She swallowed hard. "Okay, I'll try." He exhaled, relieved, but before he could say anything else, a sharp knock hit the doorframe. Jessica poked her head in. Her expression was stiff, uneasy. Thomas? There's a man outside asking for you?" Thomas's face hardened. "Who?" I don't know. He won't give his name." Sarah's head snapped up. Fear lit up her eyes like a sudden spark. "Is he tall? Gray hair? A scar by his ear?" Thomas turned sharply. "Do you know him?" Her hands shook violently. "That's the man from my nightmares. The one outside the house." And when Thomas stepped outside to face the stranger, he had no idea that this man wasn't just a threat. He was the first domino in a chain reaction that would blow open the truth about Elizabeth Anderson's disappearance. Thomas stepped out of the shelter with his heartbeat thumping hard enough to feel in his wrists. The morning air was sharp and cold, the kind that wakes you up even when you haven't slept. He scanned the parking lot, trying to spot whoever was asking for him. He didn't have to look long. A tall man stood leaning against a black SUV like he owned the pavement under his feet. Broad shoulders, military posture, gray hair, and yes, a thin scar cutting down the side of his left ear. A scar that looked old, healed badly, like it came from a knife fight or worse. Thomas felt his stomach drop. Sarah wasn't hallucinating. The man didn't smile, didn't wave. He just stared, arms crossed, like he was studying Thomas the way a wolf studies a deer trying to look brave. "You Anderson?" the man asked, voice gravelly and way too calm. Thomas stopped a few feet away. "Who's asking?" The man ignored the question. "I heard you've been asking about a ring." Thomas stiffened. "What do you know about it?" The man's jaw twitched. "Enough to tell you're digging in the wrong places." A chill crawled down Thomas's spine. Meaning what? The man pushed off the SUV and stepped forward until they were uncomfortably close. "Meaning that woman you're sheltering inside, she's trouble. Dangerous trouble." Thomas scoffed. "She's traumatized, not dangerous. You don't know her." "And you do?" The scarred man paused, eyes narrowing like he wasn't sure how much to say. When people lose pieces of their memory, sometimes it's for a damn good reason. Thomas clenched his fists. "If you're here to intimidate her..." "I'm not here for her," the man cut in, voice sharpening. "I'm here for you. Walk away from this. Take your fancy car, go back to your penthouse, and pretend this never crossed your path." The more he spoke, the more Thomas's blood boiled. "You show up at a homeless shelter like some TV villain and expect me to back down?" The scarred man stepped even closer, lowering his voice. "You have no idea what you're waking up." Thomas didn't flinch. "Then maybe you should tell me." The man's eyes hardened. "Some doors shouldn't be opened." Thomas fired back. "My mother didn't deserve to disappear without answers." That stopped him. Just for a moment. A flicker, like that name meant something. "What do you know about Elizabeth Anderson?" Thomas demanded. The man hesitated, then shook his head as if dismissing the thought. "Nothing you want to hear. Try me." Before the man could respond, the shelter door creaked behind them. Sarah stood there, wrapped in the oversized coat, looking like she might collapse any second. But her eyes, her terrified, shaking eyes, were fixed on the scarred man. He saw her. She saw him. And everything froze. The scarred man muttered, "Damn it," under his breath. Not angry at her, angry at the situation, at fate for lining up the dominoes all over again. Sarah backed up a step, trembling so hard her knees hit the doorframe. "Don't let him take me," she whispered. Thomas immediately moved between them, protective instinct snapping like a whip. "Nobody is taking you." The scarred man raised both hands, like he didn't want trouble. "I'm not here to hurt her, or you, but you're both walking blindfolded toward a cliff." "Then talk. Tell me what you know." The man exhaled slowly, then shook his head. "I can't. Not here." He reached into his jacket, slowly, non-threatening, and handed Thomas a folded piece of paper. "When you're ready for the truth, come alone." Then he walked off without another word, climbed into the SUV, and drove away. Thomas looked down at the paper. An address, a time, tonight. Inside the doorway, Sarah whispered, "He's the reason the door in my mind is locked." But Sarah didn't know the worst part. The man with the scar wasn't the only one watching them. Someone else had been following her since long before Thomas found her in the rain.
Thomas drove Sarah back to the shelter, but his mind was stuck replaying every second of the encounter with the scarred man. His voice, his warnings, that address, folded in Thomas's pocket like a ticking bomb. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, curled up, staring out the window like the rain outside was safer than whatever lived inside her memory. When they reached the shelter, Thomas walked her inside personally. He wasn't taking chances anymore. Jessica gave them both a suspicious look, but didn't ask questions. Once they were seated in a quiet corner, Thomas finally spoke. "Sarah, that man, who is he to you?" She shook her head instantly. "I don't know. I only remember pieces, shadows." Her hands trembled as she touched her temples. "Sometimes I see him standing at the end of a hallway, sometimes in a yard, but always watching." Thomas's jaw tightened. Whoever that man was, he had been part of her past, a past she was terrified to unlock. "Did he ever hurt you?" Thomas asked. Sarah's lips parted like she wanted to answer, but couldn't find the words. Finally, she whispered, "I think he kept me from something, or from someone." The ambiguity twisted something deep in Thomas. He had a habit of running toward danger, toward answers, no matter what they cost. But Sarah, she was already cracked down the middle. He had to be careful. "Listen," he said gently, "I'm meeting him tonight." Sarah's head snapped up. "No, Thomas, don't go, please." He reached across the table, resting his hand over hers. "I have to. My mother disappeared without a trace, and now you show up with her ring. Someone knows something, and I'm done being afraid of ghosts." Tears lined her eyes, but she didn't argue. She just whispered, "Please, don't go alone." He didn't respond because the note said, "Come alone," and the man felt like someone who didn't bluff. A volunteer called Sarah over to sign some forms, leaving Thomas alone at the table. He rubbed his face, exhausted, that buzzing tension behind his eyes growing stronger with every passing hour. He pulled out the folded note. 114 Carter's Mill Road. Tonight, 10 p.m. Come alone. Carter's Mill Road was on the outskirts, mostly woods, abandoned mills, and places people used to go to disappear on purpose. He exhaled, leaning back. What the hell am I walking into? A soft sound interrupted his thoughts, the shelter's front door creaking open. Thomas glanced up out of habit and froze. A man he had never seen before stepped inside. Tall, dark hoodie, hands shoved in the pockets, face shadowed. He walked right past the volunteers like he wasn't worried about anyone seeing him. His eyes flicked around the room, not roaming, not curious, searching for someone. Thomas's pulse spiked. His gaze landed on Sarah, and for one terrifying second, the stranger's entire expression shifted. Recognition, something primal, something ugly. Sarah didn't see him. She was still at the counter signing papers. Thomas stood slowly, every instinct screaming that something was off. His hand twitched, wanting to call her name warn her. But before he could move, the hooded man slipped out through the back door as silently as he came. Gone. Thomas hurried back outside, but the alley was empty. No footprints, no tire tracks. Whoever he was, he knew how to move like a shadow. Back inside, Sarah looked at Thomas nervously. What happened? He forced a calm he didn't feel. Nothing, just got some air. But inside, panic squeezed his lungs. If the scarred man was one threat, this hooded stranger was another. Someone else from her past. Someone who didn't want her safe, someone who didn't want her remembering. And when night finally fell and Thomas reached Carter's Mill Road, he would realize that he wasn't the only one who followed the address. Someone else had gotten there first.
Carter's Mill Road was the kind of place GPS signals went to die. By the time Thomas turned off the highway, the world around him had transformed into dark woods, cracked asphalt, and silence thick enough to feel like pressure on the eardrums. His headlights carved weak tunnels through the trees, revealing nothing but branches swaying like bony hands. 10:02 p.m. He was late, intentionally. If the scarred man had planned an ambush, he wanted the element of surprise on his side, too. He pulled into the clearing where an old mill stood slumped against time, its roof caved in, windows broken like jagged teeth. A single black SUV sat off to the side. Same one as earlier. Thomas stepped out, the cold night air biting through his jacket. All right, let's see what your deal is. Before he could take another step, a voice echoed from the shadows. You're late. The scarred man emerged, hands tucked in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. He didn't look like someone who'd come to fight. He looked like someone who'd come to confess something he never wanted to say. Thomas kept distance. I'm here. You wanted to talk. Talk. The man nodded once slow, but first, keep your voice down. And don't freak out. His eyes scanned the tree line. We're not alone. Thomas's heart jumped. Who? I don't know, but someone followed you. Thomas's stomach dropped. The guy in the hoodie? The man stiffened. You saw him too? Thomas said inside the shelter. He was staring at Sarah like he owned a piece of her soul. The scarred man let out a heavy, frustrated sigh. Damn it, that means he's close. Lightning fast, he grabbed Thomas's arm and pulled him behind a stack of old crates. Thomas yanked back angrily. Don't touch me. Shut up and look, he hissed, pointing. A faint shape moved in the darkness near the tree line. A figure, slow and cautious, watching, waiting. Thomas felt his pulse slam in his throat. The scarred man whispered, He's been tailing Sarah for a long time. Longer than she knows. Longer than you want to know. Who the hell is he? Thomas demanded. The scarred man hesitated, and, for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. He's part of the group that kept her hidden. Thomas blinked. Hidden? From what? He said, from herself, from what she saw, from what she survived. A coldness spread through Thomas's body. Then tell me what she saw. The man swallowed hard, the scar on his ear pulling tight as he clenched his jaw. Your mother didn't just disappear, Anderson. Thomas's blood ran cold. There was a witness, a small one, a scared one who shouldn't have been there. Thomas stared at him, breath shallow. Sarah. Yes, she was there that night. The world felt like it tilted. Thomas grabbed the man's coat, fury rising. Then tell me what happened to my mother. The scarred man didn't fight back. He just looked haunted. I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you this. Your mother didn't just walk away. Someone made sure she never would. Thomas felt the world collapse inward. "And Sarah," he said, "what does she have to do with this?" The man said she saw the truth quietly, but someone took it from her, piece by piece. A twig snapped in the woods. Both men whipped their heads toward the sound. The hooded figure stepped into sight, slow and deliberate, like he wasn't afraid of anything or anyone. The scarred man whispered, "Run." But it was already too late, because the hooded man didn't come to scare them. He came to finish the job that started 20 years ago.
For a split second, time froze, the hooded man standing at the edge of the clearing like some kind of nightmare stepping out of the trees. No hurry, no fear, just cold purpose. Then, everything snapped. The hooded man lunged first, fast, way faster than Thomas expected. The scarred man shoved Thomas behind the crates just as a knife flashed under the moonlight. "Move!" the scarred man yelled. Thomas hit the ground, gravel tearing his palms. He spun around just in time to see the hooded man swing the blade at the scarred man's throat. The scarred man dodged, barely, the knife grazing his jacket. They crashed into each other like two wild animals, fists, elbows, the crunch of impact echoing through the empty mill yard. Thomas scrambled to his feet, adrenaline burning his lungs. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't built for this. But damn it, he wasn't about to stand here while two strangers decided whether he lived or died. "Hey!" Thomas shouted, grabbing an old metal pipe leaning against the crates. The hooded man snapped his attention toward Thomas, and that split-second distraction was enough. The scarred man punched him hard in the jaw, sending the knife spinning across the dirt. "Move!" the scarred man yelled again. "Get the hell out of here!" But Thomas didn't move, not because he was brave, but because he saw something in the hooded man's eyes when the hood fell back during the struggle. Recognition. Not of the scarred man, of Thomas. Like he knew him. Like he'd been waiting for him. A chill shot through Thomas. "Who are you?" he demanded. The hooded man didn't answer. He rushed Thomas instead. The scarred man tackled him mid-sprint, slamming him into the ground. They rolled, fighting for control, each strike sounding like bone hitting bone. The hooded man slammed his elbow into the scarred man's ribs, pushing him off. He grabbed the fallen knife and scrambled to his feet. Thomas raised the pipe, hands shaking. "Back off." For the first time, the hooded man spoke, voice low and rasped, like it hadn't been used in years. "You should have stayed out of this, Anderson." Hearing his name in that voice made Thomas's stomach twist. Before he could respond, the scarred man charged again, grabbing the hooded man's wrist. The knife clattered down the hill behind the mill. But the hooded man didn't need it. He punched the scarred man in the throat, a brutal, practiced move. And the older man collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. "Stop!" Thomas yelled, swinging the pipe. The hooded man dodged effortlessly and shoved Thomas backward. Thomas stumbled, hit a tree trunk, and the pipe flew out of his hands. The hooded man took one step toward him, and a gun cocked. Thomas froze. The scarred man, still wheezing, had pulled a weapon from his ankle holster. "Don't," the scarred man warned, voice ragged. The hooded man's expression changed. Not fear, not surprise, something colder. He slowly lifted his hands as if to surrender. "Shoot me," he said quietly. "Won't change what's coming." Those words hit Thomas harder than any punch. Then, almost casually, the hooded man turned and sprinted into the woods, vanishing into the darkness with impossible speed. Thomas's breath came in sharp bursts. We have to go after him." The scarred man grabbed Thomas's arm before he could move. "No. If he wanted you dead, he'd have done it. He's not here for you."
Then who the hell? He's here for her. The scarred man's eyes locked at Thomas with grim certainty. And if he gets to Sarah before she remembers the truth, we're all screwed. Thomas's blood went ice cold. Because back at the shelter, Sarah was about to make a discovery that would rip open the door in her memory, and someone was already waiting for her when she did.
Back at the shelter, the world felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it warns. Sarah sat alone in the small lounge, hugging her knees to her chest. A storm of fear churned inside her, but something else pulsed beneath it. A memory. Faint, flickering, knocking. She closed her eyes and breathed slowly. Please, just let me remember. A soft crackle of static filled her ears, like a radio tuning through white noise. Then a whisper. Sarah, run. Her eyes snapped open. The room was empty, but she felt eyes on her, watching, examining, measuring. Jessica walked in a moment later carrying folded blankets. Hey, sweetie, you okay? Sarah nodded, even though her hands were shaking. Just tired. Want to rest in the back room? It's quieter. Yeah, maybe. But when she stood, something glinted on the floor, catching her eye. A small silver key. Her breath hitched. She kneeled down, fingers trembling as she picked it up. The key was old, scratched. Familiar. Too familiar. She swallowed hard as a sharp pain stabbed behind her eyes. A memory, pushing forward, like a hand trying to force open the locked door inside her mind. A woman crying. A hallway. A doorknob. This key. The memory slammed into her so hard, she staggered. Jessica caught her. Whoa, hey, sit down, honey. I'm fine, she whispered. But she wasn't. Her heart was racing. Her mind was cracking open. She clutched the key like it was oxygen. Where did this come from? Jessica asked. Sarah shook her head. It's mine, I think. It's from before. Before what? Before she lost herself? Before someone wiped her memory clean? Before the night? Her vision blurred and the static in her ears got louder. Find the door. A voice whispered inside her head. Find the truth. She stood quickly. Jessica, I need some air. Are you sure? It's late. Please, just a minute. Jessica hesitated, then nodded. All right, but stay close, okay? Sarah slipped outside, the cold air hitting her like a slap. The key felt hot in her hand, pulsing with old memories. She looked around. The street was empty, night deep, shadows long. But something felt wrong. She took a step toward the alley, a faint crunch behind her. She whipped around. No one there. Her pulse hammered. Thomas? She whispered hopefully. Silence. Something told her not to stay outside. She turned back toward the shelter and froze. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, dark hoodie, face half hidden. The same man Thomas saw. The same one from her nightmares. Her throat locked. He didn't move toward her, didn't chase. He just stood there, blocking the only entrance back inside, like he'd been waiting for her to walk right into his hands. Sarah, he said softly, too softly. Every cell in her body screamed. Stay away from me, she whispered, backing up. He stepped forward. One step, slow, controlled. I'm not here to hurt you. You just saw something you shouldn't have, a long time ago. Her breath hitched. What did I see? His expression darkened. Something no child should ever witness. Her knees wobbled. Her vision tilted.
Static roared in her ears. "Don't remember it," he warned. "For your sake." She clutched the key tighter, anger rising through the fear. "You can't control what I remember." Something cold flashed in his eyes. "That's exactly what I control." He reached inside his coat. Sarah stumbled backwards, and someone grabbed her from behind, a hand over her mouth, an arm around her waist, dragging her into the alley. Her muffled scream vanished into the dark. The hooded man didn't stop it, didn't react, didn't chase. He just watched, like he expected this. And while Sarah was dragged into the shadows, Thomas was racing back toward the shelter, unaware that he was already too late. Thomas drove like a man possessed. The scarred man slumped in the passenger seat, clutching his bruised ribs. Trees blurred past the windows as the car tore down the empty road toward the city. "We should have chased him," Thomas muttered, knuckles white on the wheel. "You would have died," the scarred man groaned. "That guy, he's been trained to vanish. That doesn't help Sarah." "No," the man admitted, "it doesn't." Thomas pushed the car faster, engine roaring. "How long has he been following her?" Thomas demanded. "Long enough," the scarred man said, jaw tight. "He's part of the cleanup." "Cleanup of what?" "Of everyone who knows what happened that night." Thomas slammed the brakes at a red light, chest heaving. "Just tell me what happened." The scarred man shut his eyes, jaw flexing as if the truth itself hurt. "Your mother stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to see. And Sarah, she saw the aftermath." Thomas's hand shook on the wheel. "So this is all connected. My mom, Sarah, that man?" "Yes, and if he's acting now, it means Sarah's memory is waking up. They can't risk that." The light changed. Thomas floored it. When they reached the shelter, Thomas didn't even park properly. He jumped out, leaving the engine running. The scarred man staggered out behind him, limping. The front doors were half open. A chill sliced through Thomas. "Sarah!" He bolted inside. The lounge was empty, chairs overturned, a blanket on the floor like someone had dropped it mid-step. His heartbeat roared in his ears. "Sarah!" he yelled again, voice cracking. Jessica rushed from the hallway, panic etched across her face. "Thomas, oh my God, where were you?" "Sarah said she was stepping out for air. I turned around and she was gone." Thomas grabbed her arms. "Gone how? Did she leave with someone?" Jessica shook her head violently. "I didn't see anyone, I swear. I just turned around for 1 second. The scarred man stepped in behind Thomas. "The back exit. Check it." Thomas sprinted down the hall so fast he nearly knocked over a shelf. He pushed through the back door, breath freezing in his chest when he saw it. A trail in the dirt. Scuff marks. Something dropped. He kneeled and picked it up with shaking fingers. A small silver key. Sarah's key. His heart cracked open. "No!" The scarred man leaned in the doorway, breathing hard. When he saw the key, his face fell. They took her. Thomas whipped around, furious. "You said she'd be safe at the shelter." "I said she'd be safer. But if that hooded bastard was watching her, nothing would have stopped this." Thomas clenched the key in his fist, metal digging into his skin. "Why didn't he take you or me? Why only her?" "Because she remembers something vital, something they couldn't erase forever." Thomas fought the urge to scream. "So where did they take her?" He hesitated, which terrified Thomas more than any answer. "I know a few places they use, but if he took her himself, there's only one place he'd go." "Then let's go." The scarred man shook his head. "Not yet.
If we rush in blind, she dies. Thomas stepped toward him. If we wait, she dies. The scarred man stared at him, really stared, then finally sighed. All right, but you need to brace yourself. He pointed to the silver key in Thomas's hand. That key belongs to a place tied to your mother, a place Sarah's been before. Thomas froze. What place? The scarred man swallowed. Your childhood home. Thomas felt the world tilt beneath his feet because Sarah wasn't just taken. She was being taken back to the last place Elizabeth Anderson was ever seen alive. Thomas had seen his childhood home 1,000 times in old photos. In his memory, it was warm, bright, safe. The place where his mother sang in the kitchen and read him stories on rainy nights. But as he drove toward it now, the house felt like something else entirely. A grave, a secret buried under wood and brick, a wound pretending to be a home. The scarred man sat stiffly beside him, eyes fixed ahead. You sure you're ready for this? He asked quietly. No, Thomas said, but Sarah doesn't have time for me to be ready. Carter's Mill Road had been empty, but here was even worse. The neighborhood was swallowed by silence. Most houses were abandoned. Trees hung low, branches scraping against roofs like claws. When Thomas turned into his old driveway, a shiver crawled up his spine. The house stood there like a frozen memory. Peeling paint, curtains half rotted, porch steps warped. It hadn't been lived in for years. Why would they bring her here? Thomas muttered. Because trauma sticks. When memories break, they cling to the place where everything went wrong. The implication hit Thomas like a punch. Inside the house, something terrible happened. To his mother, to Sarah, maybe to both. He approached the front door, the silver key trembling in his hand. The scarred man stopped him. Wait, what? Do you hear that? He whispered. Thomas held his breath. Nothing. And then, faintly, a soft cry. Sarah! Thomas's heart damn near snapped in half. He rammed the key into the lock. It clicked with a sickening familiarity. When he pushed the door open, the hinges screamed like they were warning him not to enter. The inside of the house was dim, lit only by moonlight leaking through broken blinds. Dust floated in the air like old memories trying to breathe again. Thomas stepped inside and nearly gagged. The smell wasn't rot, but something heavier. Sorrow. The scarred man whispered, "This is where they took your mother from." Thomas flinched. "You could have told me that earlier." "You wouldn't have believed me earlier." Thomas wanted to argue, scream, but another sound cut through the air. A muffled thud, followed by a whimper. "Sarah!" Thomas sprinted toward the sound, past the living room where photos once hung, down the hallway where his childhood footsteps still echoed in memory. He stopped at a door at the far end, his mother's old study. The key in his hand pulsed with heat, like it belonged here. Thomas shoved the door open and froze. The room inside looked untouched by time. The desk was still there, books on the shelves, a single lamp flickering weakly, casting warped shadows on the walls. And in the center of the floor, Sarah, hands tied, mouth taped, eyes wet and terrified. She shook her head frantically, trying to warn him. Thomas rushed forward, but the scarred man grabbed his arm. "Wait!" A faint click echoed from above. Too late. The hooded man stepped out from behind the bookshelf, gun lowered right at Thomas's chest. His voice was calm, deadly calm. "You should have stayed away from this house, Anderson." Thomas held up his hand slowly. "Let her go." The hooded man took a step closer, moonlight revealing the cold, haunted look in his eyes. "This place has too many memories already," he said. "We don't need to create new ones." The scarred man shifted slightly, hand drifting toward his own weapon. The hooded man noticed. "Don't," he said. "I only need one shot." Thomas swallowed, shaking with fury and fear. Why bring her here? Why make her remember? The hooded man's jaw tightened. She already remembered. A beat, which means she can't leave. "Sarah!" Sarah screamed behind the tape, because the hooded man wasn't just here to erase Sarah's memory. He was here to bury the truth Thomas had been chasing his whole life.
The hooded man kept the gun steady, the barrel pointed directly at Thomas's chest. No shaking, no hesitation. This wasn't some thug bluffing his way through a crime. This was someone used to ending problems. Sarah thrashed against the ropes, crying behind the tape, her whole body begging Thomas not to take another step. The scarred man raised his palms slowly, voice low and measured. "You don't have to do this." "Yes," the hooded man said calmly. "I do." Thomas swallowed hard, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Why? Why any of this? What the hell happened in this house 20 years ago?" Something dark flickered behind the hooded man's eyes. "You were a kid. You weren't supposed to remember. You weren't supposed to get involved. This was supposed to stay buried." Thomas stiffened. "Buried like my mother?" The hooded man's jaw flexed. He didn't nod. He didn't deny it. And somehow that was worse. The scarred man glanced at Thomas, then back to the hooded man. "You're not the one who did it," he said carefully. "You just covered it." The hooded man flinched, but only slightly, enough for Thomas to catch it. Thomas stepped forward. "Who killed her?" The hooded man didn't answer. Instead, he turned the gun towards Sarah. Thomas's heart stopped. "No!" "Don't come closer," the man snapped. "She remembers too much." Sarah's muffled, terrified sobs filled the room. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with dust and fear. "Please," Thomas whispered. "She didn't do anything." The hooded man's voice cracked just barely. "She saw everything." The scarred man lifted his hands higher. "Put the gun down. You're not a killer." A bitter laugh. "Right, because covering for other killers is so much better?" The scarred man's eyes widened. That was the first time the hooded man said anything emotional, anything real. Thomas caught it too. Pain, remorse, a wound that never healed. What did she see? What did Sarah witness? The hooded man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your mother wasn't supposed to be home that night. She walked in on something she shouldn't have. Something we were ordered to clean up." Thomas's stomach twisted. "Ordered? By who?" Silence. Cold, heavy silence. Finally, the hooded man spoke. "You already know." And Thomas did, deep down, in the part of him he'd kept locked away. His father.
The scarred man tried to divert the moment, stepping slightly to the side. "Let her go. We can figure this out." The hooded man shook his head. "It's too late." "No, it isn't," Thomas insisted. "My father is dead. Whatever he did—" "This isn't about him anymore," the hooded man snapped. "This is about the people he worked for. People who don't forgive mistakes. People who don't leave witnesses." The truth struck Thomas like a train. His father wasn't the monster. He was a piece on a bigger board. A board with players still alive. Thomas took another slow step toward Sarah. The hooded man stepped back, gun trembling now, the first sign of weakness he'd shown. "Don't make me do this," he whispered. Thomas's voice softened. "Hey, look at me." The hooded man reluctantly shifted his eyes. "You don't want to kill her." A long beat. The hooded man's eyes watered, almost imperceptibly, as though some old memory was clawing its way back to the surface. "No, but I can't let them find her." Before Thomas could ask who they were, a loud crack echoed from outside, the splinter of wood, the slam of footsteps. All three men froze. The hooded man's eyes widened. "No," he whispered, terror flooding his face. "They're here." Because whoever just entered the house wasn't Thomas's ally. It was the very danger the hooded man had been running from his whole life. Thank you for staying with us through this emotional journey. If this story hit your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. You won't want to miss the next one. And tell us in the comments,